Now, for more on the war between Russia and Ukraine, a Global Affairs Analyst, Phatey, joins me now from Washington, D.C. Good to have you join us.
My pleasure.
Give us your thoughts on the scale of this disaster, and I'm talking about the dam in Ukraine.
Well, I think when Russia was first gone into Ukraine, they had said that they were going to liberate the nation. No country that is going to invade another sovereign state in the name of liberation will continue to destroy its infrastructure, especially as critical as electrical infrastructure like a hydro dam. And then destroying that is also leading to other humanitarian disasters. Now, I think the codes of war are very, very clear, which is whatever you do is not going to affect civilians, right? You're not going to attack civilians. But this, whether directly or indirectly, is also an attack on civilians. You have destroyed their energy supply, one. Two, the dam being destroyed means that there's going to be flooding, and then thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of people will have to be evacuated immediately. They are homeless. They will need healthcare. They will need food and other humanitarian services. So there is a whole lot of humanitarian disaster. It is bad as it is.
And we've seen both Russia and Ukraine trade blames as to who is responsible for this particular attack. But as you think about it, who do you think stands to benefit from this particular attack?
Well, you know what? There's no benefit. It's the people that are losing at the end of the day, in all reality, is the Ukrainian people. But who is responsible for this? Russia has to absolutely take full responsibility for the destruction of the dam. There is no excuse for it. I mean, if anybody looks at this, we should be able to conclude that it is targeted, it is deliberate. And mind you, since the bridge in Crimea have been attacked, Russia has been continuing since then. They have targeted critical infrastructure within Ukraine to destroy. So it totally makes sense. It is their responsibility. Nobody is reading when a dam is destroyed. At the end of, even if Russia occupies Ukraine, they will have to rebuild that dam. Now, Ukraine has successfully resisted the Russian invasion, and it's been a war that's long overdue. And I think it is a war that Putin must bring to an end. And I think it's the best thing for him to do, and the best thing he can do for his country, for his own people, and get these sanctions lifted as well on his own people.
And this particular attack happened as Ukraine prepares for its counteroffensive. What impact will this have on its military operations on the ground?
Look, I think Russians have withdrawn, like in towns like Tomak. They have actually not withdrawn fully, but they've actually they've been pushed back. And then I believe what we will call they are trying to regroup to capture more territory or to counterattack. But the Ukrainian military have been able to push them back. Now, if you follow some of these news reports, there have been indications that you have over what the Ukrainian troops were able to push back the Russians, and then after that they were able to send in tanks. So which comes to one conclusion scientifically, which is the Ukrainian counterattack has been gaining momentum. It has been progressive. Now it is a slow process. I mean, we're talking about a big country with a much more higher military budget and might, with a much more human power in terms of military capability to a very, very small country. So I think we should not expect, anybody should not expect a rapid counteroffensive that is would gain 100% like meaningful results that anybody can say is impressive. It is going to be a painful and slow process, but it is gaining pace and it is progressive.
And once again, in all of this, this Zaporizhia power plant is under threat. We saw that earlier in the war. But we're seeing that once again it is under threat, and that's because this particular dam supplies the water that cools the power plant. How concerned is this for you, and how concerned should the international community be, especially allies, those who are allies of Ukraine?
Look, I think it is concerning. Everybody needs to be concerned, and that is why the international community, especially the United States and the EU, must respond quickly to Ukraine with all the aid and technical support that they can provide them to rebuild this dam and also ensure that they get their hydro and power supplies and everything functional again. It may take time, but it reminds me of during the World War, when Europe was really, fundamentally everything was bad and America had to come to their aid. I believe it's just the same way that both the United States and the EU must help Russia. Must help Ukraine. And mind you, in the beginning of this war, everybody called it a proxy war. We cannot totally rule that out. Okay, that Russia has time without number. The Kremlin and Putin have said that the United States is using Ukraine and use that as part of the excuses to also invade them. I mean, it is only an obligation on the United States to make sure that they are able to give Ukraine not just weapons and military training, but also to give them the technical support and the resources they need to rebuild their infrastructure and to ensure that they continue to get critical energy and water supply.
And I want to get to the humanitarian angle of this in just a moment, but I'm wondering what it would take for Ukraine to protect its key infrastructures from attack like this.
I think they need more, should I say, they will need more technology in terms of destroying incoming missiles in key infrastructural site, especially on electrical power plant. That they will need. Unless that is protected, then those attacks will continue to happen. I mean, whether it's a drone attack, whether it's a missile attack, they need to be able to stop them before it reaches their target point. So they really need technology to help them.
And finally, how do we begin to address, and by we I mean the international community and aid agencies begin to address the humanitarian disaster arising from, I mean, there is already humanitarian crisis arising from the war itself, but this particular incident has led to more crisis. How do you think this should be addressed?
I think there should be a concerted effort by the United Nations Security Council and also by the United Nations General Assembly to ensure that we have UNHCR, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, and also UNICEF to go into Ukraine and have a full-fledged operation. The same thing applies for the WHO and the Food and Agricultural Organization. I mean, they need these organizations within the UN system to be there. Also, the UN Human Rights Council must also act as well. And they need to also reach out to countries that are seen as maybe kind of friendly to Russia. And this may not be something that people will think it's that important, but perhaps there are some nations in Africa, Mali, Central African Republic, South Africa, actually being able to engage with Russia. Maybe for once, Africa also can take a leading role. I mean, we have seen it during the Gulf War in Kuwait between the United States and Saddam Hussein. I mean, we between Iraq and Iran and the United States involvement during that time in Kuwait, we have seen how a small country like the Gambia, for example, then President Sadr Karaba Jawara was chairman of the Organization of Islamic Islamic Conferences. He led a delegation to go negotiate that deal. So perhaps Africa needs to take its rightful role in trying to ensure that they can engage both with Russia and also with the West and kind of bring this to an end. At the end of the day, they have to end up at the table.
Thank you so much for talking to us. We're watching this development. We'll see how it plays out. Global Affairs Analyst Phatey.